Hello, hi, it's Pearl again, and we're going to do another podcast today. And this one is about two things really. One is boundaries in life and in classes, and the other thing is about honouring your teachers. And these are two subjects that have been really a big thing for me this year, but also really came up for me when I went to the Zumba convention in Orlando. So talking about boundaries and rules and ground rules, and you may well have a couple of rules in your class that you follow, either because you've put them in place or because you may teach in a facility that has those boundaries. My friend will say about me when we talk about rules and boundaries, he says I'm very Monica of Friends, that the rules help contain the fun and they keep it, he takes the mick out of me. But basically, one of the things I was hearing from people is that they were getting quite stressed about certain things that their participants were doing, things that people are doing in class. And it's very important to set your boundaries and adjust them, review them as well, because sometimes we set a boundary and then afterwards you think, you know what, I may or may not need that, I may want to change it. And that's fine. And the thing is, what my belief is that your class, your rules, So if somebody doesn't like those rules, their option is to leave the class, and that's really up to them. So I think there's, if you go and you look on other websites, there'll be some very good ground rules that you can have for your class. Things like, timekeeping, your warm up. It's so important. I have been to a lot of classes when I first started teaching, and I'll go to somebody and say, well, you didn't seem to teach a warm up, and they'll be like, oh, okay, if I teach a warm up, I get complaints in the studio. And there is a possibility that people might leave your class if they think your warm-up is dull. You can always spice it up. You can make step touch very interesting. I've seen amazing people do a very simple basic warm-up that was just electric. But you have a choice in terms of your ground rules. Are you going to keep your warm-up for safety, and really to just honour your participants, really. It is in their best interest and in your best interest as well. Because, if you don't warm up properly, you're going to be more prone to injury, or do you cut corners, and that's something that I think you really need to think about. Now I'm wearing, I thought it was very appropriate, I'm wearing my Beach Patrol sweatshirt. Now I have a rule when I take my nieces and nephews out, and the rule is it's the same thing we have on the beach, we have in a fitness class, if I take them anywhere, anywhere there's a road and it's safety first. Number one, safety first. And I feel that pretty much all my boundaries that I really stick to, and I find it easy to stick to them because it's about safety. There are other ones that I have in my class I find harder to stick to because I think, oh, am I being funny here? Am I being funny here? But if I look at it, I will usually find that there is an underlying base that this ground rule is for safety. And this year I've kind of come up with my sort of, level of things that I think is important in class. And I think for me, it used to be, let's make people fit, and that's great. Above that, I feel we need to make people happy, because if they're happy, they come back. If they're happy, fitness comes from that. The happiness and the joy is above that. And above that even is safety. Safety is the number one thing for me, because I do everything I can. Like if you go to the beach, you're going to do everything you can to be safe. Accidents happen, things happen. And when an accident happens, you want to be sure that you've done everything you can to reduce that possibility of it happening. If you go to the beach and you do everything that you can to be safe, and a wave comes, that's going to happen. That might happen. But at least you've done everything to avoid any stupid injuries, if you know what I mean. Okay. So, looking at boundaries and ground rules, one of the things I kind of struggle with, and I've talked to people who are very amazing teachers, and they'll say to me, and they're not Zumba teachers, but other kinds of teachers, and say, you need to set your ground rules. And very often, if you go into, say, a workshop or something like that, you might well sit down at the beginning and decide your ground rules. So the other thing you could do is, I could do is actually work with your students to come up with the ground rules that you think are appropriate. So that's always useful as well. Listen to what they have to say about ground rules. So I think the thing is, when it comes to ground rules and boundaries, what's really important is you kind of have, what are you going to do if somebody breaks them? So the first thing you can do obviously is iterate. You may not have repeated all the ground rules because a lot of them seem to be common sense. Somebody breaks one and the first thing you might do is say, look, and you might say it right there or at the end of the class, guys, please, when this happens, please can you do this? Okay? You might not want to single out that person, but it's kind of unavoidable sometimes. So I had this with phone calls. And my rule is we don't use the phone in the class. Please set your phone to silent. Please put it on ringtone. My exception to this is I teach a lot of carers, and I always say to them, look guys, if you're waiting for an important phone call, if you're worried about the person, you've left somebody else caring for someone, you come in, put your phone on loud, put your phone on really loud, and when it rings, you take the phone and you go outside and you walk it out while you're on your phone, and then you come back in. What we don't want is somebody to go and pick up the phone and start having a conversation. This is particularly important in something like gold or gold chair class, because you're going to really interrupt my class, and that's not allowed. Once that ground rule is there, hopefully people can follow it. The difficult thing is if somebody's already done that, they might have already annoyed the class, so they're going to get a little backlash from the class. You can manage that by just saying, my thing of this is I say, look guys, we're a family. So if somebody does something, and if I'm teaching and I'm trying to teach you something and somebody does this over here, just remind them, just say, guys, this is the rule. We all know the rule, this is what it is. If you're telling them something, you're doing my job for me. So that's okay for you to do. It's okay for you to say to somebody, if somebody doesn't have any water and they're looking thirsty, you say, oh, did you know there's water over there? This happens sometimes if people come in a little bit late. And I'm one of those people that I do allow people to come in late. You might have a rule. I've seen people have rules saying, if you're not in there in the first, 30 seconds of my class or the first minute of my class, you do not come in because you've missed the warm-up and it's not safe. Okay, so you could set that boundary if you want to. I don't have that boundary because I feel my rule is when people come in late, I say, you've got to walk it out for 2 songs. Yeah, you're not going to jump. You're not going to do anything strenuous in the first 2 songs. You're going to walk it out, keep it easy. My feeling behind that is, again, I have a lot of people who are carers and who may get caught up. And I could be stricter with the boundaries, but I choose not to be. And that's my personal choice on that. Again, if people leave early, they should know that if somebody's going to leave early, I do expect them to tell me, and I will go through with them. Okay, you're going to walk out the last. You're going to, at this time in the clock, you're going to stop. You're going to start walking out. Okay, you're not going to stop. Okay, you're going to walk out, and then you're either going to do your stretches at the back of the class or outside. You're not going to just stop and then go sit down because you're going to feel bad. You're going to feel bad. So, and that's actually quite useful to have for people anyway to know, because if they have an emergency, for example, if something happens, they do get that phone call, then they know how to warm, how to cool down. Even if it's a rough cool down, at least they get that. So those are the kind of things, and those are sort of almost emergency conditions. And I was writing actually about my Florida trip, and I was writing about going snorkeling for the first time. And we're there on the boat, and the captain goes, right, how many good listeners do I have? And we're like, He's right, good listeners come back. Bad listeners stay out in the water somewhere out there, and the sharks can eat them. And we're like, how many good listeners? Yes, we're here. We're all here. Having said that, there were people on that trip who did not listen and who were swimming off God knows where, and there were people that were like, everybody else, we had to stop what we were doing and saying, look, there's a guy who's wandering off, he's going where he shouldn't be going, So when people do break the rules, and again, my friend is saying Monica here, it actually does affect the whole class. It affects the whole group of people. It affects the teacher. Your teacher's not going to give you such a good class if they're distracted and they're worrying about what this person's doing over here. It's always the people who come in late and say, I needed half the class, can I pay for half of it? And you're thinking, no, because you took up 5 times as much of my attention as the person who came in on time, did the workout, listened to what I had to say. And you can hear in my tone that there are some times when that gets kind of frustrating, because it's often the 1 or 2 people that you have who are kind of questioning the boundaries and pushing the boundaries that create the work. And that's the other thing about boundaries. They're so important no matter what they are, because they're actually a lesson in life. If you're teaching kids classes and you have rules and you have guidelines in those, if you start bending those rules, you start breaking them no matter what they are, it's exactly like small children. They're going to learn, I don't have to listen. I don't have to follow the boundary. I can get around the rules. And that's not a great lesson for anyone to learn, okay? It's good to know that there is wiggle room, that there are exceptions to the rule. Of course there are exceptions to the rule. But those are for extenuating circumstances, and you need to figure out what those are. Okay, so talking about a couple of other boundaries. I've had to deal with people filming in my class. I had an incident, and at the time I had young people in the class, so I wasn't even really thinking, consciously. It was just immediate action, because you've got to protect the people in your class. Somebody is filming and they're filming, a kid in your class. That can't happen. Just that can't happen. So essentially, I went straight over to the guy and I said, look, give me your phone. We're going to delete everything that's on your phone. You can have your phone back, but you're going to have to leave now. You got to leave now. Luckily, they weren't participating. They're actually waiting for somebody. So I could ask them to leave and not feel that I hadn't called them down or anything. But I will say that that's one instance happened. And if you do react to your very first incident of something strongly, that's often the best way of doing it, because it means that people will learn from that. I had another incident this year. Now, here's the other thing. When you have a boundary, if somebody breaks it, are you going to penalise them? What's the penalty going to be for breaking that? It might be that you turn around and you say, guys, that's not allowed. And they might be a bit embarrassed that you've said that. Okay, so that's number one. And then you carry on the class as normal. Number two, you may ask them to leave the class. Okay, and this has happened to me a few times. Generally, one of the facilities I teach, they have a lot of parents with children, and it's usually when they come in with a child and they're not looking after that child. I've had people leave a pushchair in my class and go to the toilet, and I was like, you don't leave a child in my class. This is not appropriate at all. Also, if you bring a child into class and they decide to run around or bring toy, no, this is not. And this is like one of those moments where it's like, okay, guys, you're going to have to wait a second. We're going to stop. I'm going to ask this person to leave. I have actually on one occasion have to open the door and stand there with the door open until the person left, because they kind of thought I was kidding, and I was like, I'm not kidding. We've got to protect the people in the class who are doing the class. This is not a spectator sport. I appreciate you want to come and bring your child for amusement, but no, that's not going to happen. So you might ask them to leave their class for the day, and it might be, okay, not this time. When you come back next time, please don't bring your child. Please don't bring, if somebody was to come into your class and you were aware that they had been drinking, you might want to say, look, you're not really in a fit state to do this. So when you come back next time, can you make sure that you're not, that you're actually capable of doing the class, that you're not drunk. And that might sound like a strange thing to say, but I know it's happened to at least one person who's teaching classes. Well, no. The third thing is you might want to ban somebody full time, and this might be this is what I would call zero tolerance. If somebody behaves in a certain way, you have the opportunity and you have the option of turning around to that person saying, I'm sorry, you're banned from all my classes from now on. And I had to do that this year, and it really was very, very hard. And it was about language that was used, and I have zero tolerance for racial and religious hatred. Okay, so that's my bottom line. And I was like, I wouldn't necessarily say that was written down in stone, but I do feel that's kind of like, I think that's a really good ground rule to have. And I literally was like, right, I'm sorry, that's it, done. There are no apologies, there are no comebacks from this. Because if something said to me, I can handle it. And I was thinking about giving this person a timeout, and I thought no, because if they had said that to anybody else in this class, I would not accept it. So sometimes you also have to put yourself in the position of saying, okay, I'm a teacher, but if somebody says something to me, that's just as bad as I'm saying it to anybody else. So it's also about protecting yourself from abuse, and it is abuse. Now, the other thing I would talk about is physical violence. So physical violence. And you might say, okay, that's really obvious. If somebody comes and hits you, you're going to kick them out of class. What do you do when it's an 87-year-old lady who comes up and pats you on the back? And I've had that, somebody patted me, and I went, that really hurt. She said, oh, don't be silly, whack. And I had to say to her, no, you're very strong. You don't realise how strong you are. And, for me, I was like, okay, that was an unintentional one. But it's an interesting thing, about boundaries and ground rules. I have had problems in classes before with people pushing and shoving. Happens in kids' classes. Happens in my Zumba Gold classes. And sometimes I will go through a phase where before every single class I will say, no pushing, no shoving, no kicking, no scratching, no biting. And it's like, guys, you may know each other really well. You may be best friends. You may behave like this outside my class. But when you're in my class, you don't push somebody else to the front. You don't say, go on, you get up there, you go up the front. No. If that person wants to be at the back, they're at the back. If they want to hang out at the side, that's up to them. If they want to take it easy, they can take it easy. You don't need somebody else in the class telling them what to do, because that's my job. I'm the teacher. So those are the boundaries that I, really was looking at. And it kind of dovetails into the whole thing about honouring your teacher. And so first thing is, I want to honour a couple of my teachers. I brought a couple of books up. These are great if you're looking into this kind of stuff we're talking about as well. So we got a great book by a guy called Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk, nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King. So it's got a good pedigree. He's still alive, and he's actually, I think he's in America at the moment, and he's doing a tour. So if you can always Google him and find out if he's doing a talk near you. Amazing guy. And I'll tell you something about him in a second. Susan Jeffers, you probably know her, Feel the Fear. Huge. She's got about, she's got loads of other books as well, really, really useful. One I love, which is called End the Struggle and Dance with Life. Lovely. One of my greatest teachers, and we miss her because she died last year. Marianne Williamson, amazing book, Return to Love. Quite heavy on the religious wording, but it is available. It is for everybody of every background. So really useful and really great about work. The section on work is amazing. And then I've got some business gurus as well, people I listen to a lot. Seth Godin, amazing marketing guy, really, really good. Short books, very, very short books, and a great blog, so you can check him out. Linda Kaplan Taylor and see longer names, but The Power of Nice, great book. Why You Should Be Nice in Business, absolutely brilliant. Again, small books. Small business books are good, because big business books just go on. The business things are like, And Richard Branson, great. Again, small books. Really, really nice for getting little tips about business and carrying on. And both of them, basically, business is life, life is business. What you do in one, you're going to do in the other. So, coming back to honouring your teachers. Oh, and I want to tell you this thing about Thich Nhat Hanh. And I saw a little video, and he was talking to a child in one of his workshops. And the child came over and he said, what do you do if your teacher makes fun of you and the rest of the class laugh at you? Okay, and Thich Nhat Hanh, who's this amazing Buddhist monk, said, well, the best thing to do, the kindest thing that you can do in that situation, he goes, is laugh with them. Even if it's not funny, you can laugh with them and just let it go. That's your work. And I thought it was very good. And then what he also said is, you've got to remember that teachers are human, and they're always learning to be teachers. They're always learning what they're doing. So hopefully you can learn from this experience. And when you go on and maybe you become a teacher, you can learn from this experience and not do it because you know how it feels. I thought it was lovely, because it's not about fixing the other person. It's about really the work that you can do. So talking about honouring your teachers, why is this so important, and why is it so important to me? And I must admit, I did get annoyed, and I know a lot of other people got annoyed during the Zumba convention, at times when we felt that other students, other participants weren't honouring the person who was teaching us. And the first thing is if you're in a group, if you're not honouring your teacher, you're not honouring the rest of the class, because if you're not following the boundaries, if you're not paying attention, if you're too busy having your own personal chat over here, you're kind of saying that what you've got to say, what you're doing is much more important than what the teacher's got to say. And I know when I go to a class, I come for the teacher. I don't really come to listen to what you've got to say. I come to listen to this person. So it's very important. I liked, one person said, and they said, look, there's no talking in my class. Unless you're translating. If you're translating, it's okay. And I think that was really good, because you say, okay, yes, because you're actually honouring the teacher, because you're helping somebody else. And you can be doing that as well. You can be supporting somebody else. But be careful with that, because remember, you're not there to teach other people. You are there to absorb the knowledge and to learn from it yourself, unless you're doing, say, a group exercise where you might work with people. And again, we found it a lot of the time very distracting, because other people were filming, taking photographs, and it blocked our view, and it distracted from the energy of what we were trying to do. And I don't have any problem in turning around to somebody else and saying, could you put your camera down? I'm trying to see this. Your camera's in front of me. No, drop it. I'm going to watch this. Take as many, I take a lot of photos. Anyone knows me knows I take a lot of photographs. But consider your time and place. Take them at the beginning, take them at the end, Don't let it disrupt what you're doing. So that was a big thing for me when I was away. The other thing is, and Susan Jeffers is great with this, because she says this. She says, I'm going to teach you a lot of stuff. You don't have to do it all. Don't assume when you go into a class, you've got to do everything the teacher says. You've got to take it all away and use those things. But listen to it all, and then you can decide what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Take the bits that you cherry pick, what's useful to you, what works for you. Because every teacher has different ideas, and that's okay. Thich Nhat Hanh says, go out, try lots of different teachers, then try it, try it and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, that's okay. You can try something different. But don't disrespect the teacher, because your teacher, and it doesn't matter whether they're your parents or, a wonderful Zumba specialist, or just somebody, you might go to a class that somebody's been teaching for 2 weeks. Because what they're doing is they're trying it, they are putting it out there. And as teachers, now I'll say we're often the worst students, and that's not very good, because we know what it's like to stand up in front of other people. We know what it's like to try and teach other people. So we should have more compassion. And again, I'm using the should word a lot here, but I would like to think that we can have more compassion for any other teacher. Instead of coming in and going, hey, what are you going to teach me? I know it all. We can come in and go, okay, I know how hard it is to get up in front of 2 people or 10 people or 20 people and teach them. So I want to honour you, because then it's going to make you able to teach me better. I'm going to get a better experience, and I'm going to learn more if I give you the benefit of the doubt. Even if I disagree with somebody, even if I hate the steps, even if I hate the song, I will stand and I will do it to the best of my ability, because what you put in, you get out. If somebody asks me, if I'm in a class, somebody asks me to do an exercise, I'm going to do it, unless I am, unless it goes against some moral value or a physical injury. I'm going to do that exercise, because that's what I'm there to do. I'm there to learn. And it's very, very important when we put ourselves in the position of a student, as teachers, to recognise, again, what do I find hard about this? And very often the things that we resist will be the things that we benefit from most. I do other things like life coaching, Reiki, and I have an incredible teacher who I really should have honoured first. Again, there's links. If you go to the Reiki on my website, there's a link to her website. She's amazing. And very often, if I'm doing, even an hour one-to-one with her, there'll be something she asks me to do. And I can be very resistant to it. And I can want to just stare at the carpet or say something. And she's very good at checking me in and going, no, we're coming back to this thing that, what we're going to talk about. And I often have to think at that moment, I really don't want to do this. I want to back off. I'm going to give 100%. I'm going to give 100% because I'm here for this. I came into this class. I came into this room. If I'm here with a teacher, I'm going to do what they say. Even if it hurts, even if it's difficult. And in that moment, usually what happens is wonderful. Usually what happens is I go, oh, okay, this is why I was resisting it. I had a big issue about this. I had a big ego problem with this, whatever it was. And I remember, again, I think we've done a thing about leaving the ego at the door. If we can leave the ego at the door as students, instead of going, oh, I'm not going to do this, oh, this is easy, this is boring, no. If we stop making excuses and creating problems in our own heads, and we just, honestly go in and say, right, I'm just going to do everything, I'm going to be honestly here, we can learn a lot about ourselves as well. Because it's usually the things that we're the most resistant to, that when we actually get into it, we go, oh, that's easy, oh, no. And then we do it and we go, it's not actually that easy. It looked like, we might think it's easy, but somebody's going to do it a little bit different. And we go, oh, okay, I learned something there. I learned something. But the more closed off we are and the less we honour our teachers, the less we're going to learn. We do that, the teaching's not going to come through. So it's a bit like tasting everything. If you go to an amazing restaurant, taste it all, try it all. You might not like it. I tried raw octopus once, and I think it's still the most disgusting thing I've ever tried, and I was really almost quite ill. And my friend who I went with I said, you know what, if you tell me something's good, she's introduced me to so many foods. She's my teacher in sushi and all this kind of thing. So if she says to me, this is really good, try it, I'm going to try it. I might try it once, and then not again. But, you know, I will try it, because if I don't open myself up to those negative experiences, I'm not going to get all the positive experiences as well. So even if you go into a situation, a classroom, and you have 10 negative experiences and one really amazing one, you learn something really, really amazing, I think it's worth it to be open and to honour the teachers and to really respect. And this is what I'm going to close on. It's really important that when we honour our teachers, to not diss them, okay? To not diss their choices, to not be negative. You might not like a song, you might not like the moves, you might not like a photograph that they post on Facebook. That's okay. You cannot like it. You can be okay with not being okay. But you have to think about, is it your place to disagree with somebody? We live in a world, and you can see I'm getting annoyed about this. You might notice on my videos I have approved comments only on YouTube, approved only. So I don't get bad comments. Because I choose what comments I'm going to display and what comments I'm not. I once posted a video. We got over 250,000 hits of a girl dancing from my movie. And I was deeply shocked by some of the comments that people put up. And they were very cruel and ill thought out. And they were wrong. They were just wrong. And they really hurt the person. And I think sometimes in the digital age, you know, we get used to criticism. People criticize everything, being negative about things. And number one, it's not very nice, is it? It's just not polite. It's just not good manners, you know. And I think the thing is when somebody's your teacher, you kind of almost have to think about it as being, you know, they're hosting a dinner party. If you don't like something, that's okay, you know. But you still say thank you for inviting me. Thank you for putting on this dinner party. But unfortunately, some people still feel it's okay. Like weddings. You get invited to somebody's wedding and people feel it's okay to criticise the dress and this and that quite openly. And I just think that's really bad manners. And the worst part about it is, as an artist, say as you know, as a filmmaker, as a writer, you know, you get criticism. And it's hard because you have to get used to it. But the thing is, if you criticise people too much, and they're going to stop doing it. They're going to stop being open and free and lovely, and you know, they're going to stop blogging, they're going to stop writing books, they're going to stop, because at a certain point, you know, the bullies can win if we let them. And that's the thing, is we've got to remember is that there's a certain point when criticism is bullying. If you were standing in somebody's class and you're openly disrespecting them and they're your teacher, you're bullying. You're trying to bully your teacher. And one of my boundaries is no bullying. Okay, so we don't have bullying in the class. If somebody says they feel bullied, I would definitely address that, and I would want somebody to tell me if they felt. If I see it, you know, if I see pushing or something that's obvious, it doesn't matter if the person says it's okay. It's like, it's not okay in my class. This is bullying. We're not going to have it. So that's kind of what I said I was going to end on the other thing. And again, I feel it's very, very important that we bear in mind when we write something on Facebook, when we write something on any forum, that this is the same as when you say something to somebody's face, okay? Would you go up to this person and say it to their face? Because if you wouldn't, be very careful with what you say. I have been negative about teachers. If somebody says to me, honestly, what do you think of this? There were one or two things I was like, you know, I didn't really like the choreography, and I didn't really like the music, and I didn't like that. But I would say to that person, I would say, look, you know, that wasn't my taste. And I thought this could have been done better, and I would give honest feedback about it. But you know, it's a way of how you do it, with kindness, being kind about things. And the other thing I would say to you as well, with boundaries, some things can be easier than others. The thing that I find quite difficult at the moment I'm working on is boundaries in terms of bookings and people turning up and overcapacity of classes. And it's a great problem to have. You know, what happens when your class gets too big and you have to turn people away? And I find that really, really difficult, especially when it's gold. Because I don't want to turn anybody away. And I don't want to penalise somebody if they book and they don't turn up. But I know it's something that I've got to be stronger in and I've got to work on. So I'm going to have a stronger policy. I'm going to enforce that policy. There's no point having boundaries if you don't stick to them and you don't hold them up. I'm not saying you shouldn't have wiggle room for extenuating circumstances, but, you know, it's very important. Anyway, I've wittered on a bit today, so I apologise for that. But I hope you will honour your teacher and forgive me for wittering a bit. Okay? So thank you. I really hope this is useful to you. As Susan Jeffords would say, please take what's useful Leave the rest. Remember, we are beach patrol, okay? Safety first. If you're at the beach, you're in a class, whatever you're doing, safety first. And enjoy. As Monica would say, the rules protect the fun. They make the fun work better. Anyway, have a great time. Enjoy the fun. And the more you protect the people in your class, the more you can relax, have fun, let go, enjoy. And I really, really hope you have the most amazing classes. Okay?